When your entire identity becomes veterinary medicine, it's easy to lose sight of who you are outside the profession. But what if the first step back is making really crappy art? Today, we explore rebuilding a life beyond vet med through hobbies and creativity. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Addie Reinhardt.
And I'm Ginger Templeton.
We're both vets who stepped out of full-time clinical practice, but we're still deeply rooted in the profession.
And this is Out of Practice, a podcast where we talk honestly about life in and out of vet med.
This podcast is brought to you by MentorVet.
Hey, Addie, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. I'm getting over a cold, but, otherwise doing pretty good.
So we're doing a podcast.
Yes.
And I feel like we were just talking before we started recording and you had a story to tell.
Oh, yeah. Well, just like I think we've been talking about doing a podcast for MentorVet for like years, and it's just never happened. And then it's been a lot of come into a different few forms. And then finally, I think when you text me and said, hey, I want to do something again with MentorVet. And I was like, oh, let's do a podcast. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And I have been really intentional when thinking about this, just since we started talking about it, to not overplan.
Amazing. I love that.
And and I thought every podcast that I listen to starts out, unless it's like, produced by professionals and, really famous people. It's kind of rambling at the start. And then you get into it later. Like usually I'll listen halfway through, fall in love, go back to the beginning. And I'm like, oh, the beginning. And so I didn't want to do that. And I think there's a temptation for us to introduce ourselves and tell our whole story. But I think we should wait. I think we should just start talking about vet med.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump in.
Okay. So I mentioned to you before the recording that I wanted to talk about life outside of vet med. And I think we should do that for a few episodes because I think there's a lot to cover.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And it kind of aligns with a lot of the things that we talk about at MentorVet on the regular, whether through speaking or our programs. And so I think, talking about this topic is important.
And I would say that it was put on my radar working at MentorVet more than ever before.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, in two ways. And so the first is sort of, the curriculum and what we talk about with the participants in the program. But I also, and I think you've heard me say this before, watch you have a life outside of vet med in a way that a lot of people in the profession are not so good at.
That's really nice. And I think because of my role and my position, and I mean, I've experienced burnout a few times in my career, and I think leading individuals in our community and having to follow, what we're preaching, essentially, it makes me kind of acutely aware of of the need to make sure that I am doing all these things to have a life outside of vet med.
So when you were in vet school, were you not so good at balance?
I think I've been pretty focused. Like I get really obsessed, like hyper obsessed with what I'm doing. And so sometimes if, the goal is get into vet school, then everything else kind of revolves around that goal. And so, working at a vet clinic, making sure my studies aligned, being part of all the right organizations. Now, granted, I was still part of the climbing club before vet school, but I think in vet school, something disappeared. And I think it was like the need to kind of succeed and, get A's, and because maybe I might be applying to a residency and suddenly this new goal. And I mean, to be fair, during vet school, I was still like rock climbing on the weekends, like would go out and climb. And I would just say that my personal life was like pretty dampened at that stage.
So pretty normal for a vet student.
Yeah. I think I kind of lost myself a little bit during vet school. Like I kind of, after 4 years of that, kind of graduated and recognized that I didn't really know who I was and who was the person in the mirror in front of me. And Yeah, I just remember like I had to get a hobby. I had to do something different because I
Yeah.
just was all totally consumed with the even starting out my career and just yeah, I think I was totally absorbed in it and lost myself a bit.
Well, I thank you for sharing that. I think that's hard to say out loud for some people. And I think for our listeners to hear it, I'm thinking about my career right now being so very different than it was 20 years ago and the specialists that I work with. So for people who don't know, I, work for a company of mobile specialists. And when they're coming out of residency, I think that having lost yourself, not knowing who you are. I don't want to speak for all of them, right? But I think that is even maybe more extreme. Um, so just thinking about it from their perspective, as well as, of course, all of the general practitioners out there, all of the people in other areas. So maybe we should back up a little bit because I said that you do a great job of having a life outside of vet med, but we haven't really talked about what
Oh
that
yeah.
is.
Oh, well, can
You,
I also add with the interns and residents, man, if I felt that way after 4 years, can you imagine 4 years, then a couple rotating internships, then, 3, 4 years of residency. Like, that's
yeah.
almost like a decade of your life, like completely consumed by it. So, yeah, I can't even imagine the kind of scale and extent at which it might apply to our interns and residents.
Well, and I think we have to consider what decade that is for most also. It's not just
Yeah.
a decade, which is a huge chunk of time, but it's the first
Emerging
adult decade,
adulthood. Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can you know? And then you come out, so much of your persona has been built around, not speaking
Yeah.
for everybody, but not only have you as the individual probably built it, but your mentors, everybody around you, is like pushing you, molding you in this one very specific direction. And then all of a sudden it's time to have a life, yeah, a professional, but also have this other life. And I think it's a tough transition. It's a tough transition out of that school, but I think especially for those who do some type of specialty
Yeah. It's
afterwards.
quite
And we
jarring.
probably don't talk about it
Yeah,
enough.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I think you get like that identity dissonance. You're like, this is who I am, but I don't really feel like this person either. So I
Mm,
don't know. But okay,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead. What were
So
Yeah.
your life outside of vet and I have very specific reasons in mind, things that I want to talk about in this
Okay.
episode. So we'll get there. I'll get
Okay.
us there. But you mentioned climbing, and that's not what I
Okay.
was thinking about at all. So you're a climber.
Kind of. I
What
was a
else?
climber. I've have like way too many hobbies, but I climbed a lot in college. I was like the president of the climbing club at East Tennessee State, and climbed a lot indoor and outdoor for a long time. It's also a sport that's kind of hard on the body over time. So
Mm, yeah.
I kind of I've switched to a lot of other things. You want to hear about all my current hobbies?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Because I know you have a lot. And I know about some, but I probably don't
Okay.
know all of them.
So let's see. The latest I've been really focused on my music lately. So that's even becoming
Yeah.
like part of my professional life even because I this about 2 years ago met a violinist and we just hit it off and then we started a little band and
Yeah.
now we're looking at I think we just are finishing up like our 70th event or wedding of the year.
Wow.
So that's been
Wow.
consuming most of my time. I play piano, but we also work on like original music stuff. We just released our first album, debut album, like on the 13th of November.
So we will link that in the
Yes.
show
Oh,
notes.
yes. We will.
Jacob,
We
our
will,
producer.
we will link that in the show notes for sure.
That's
Yeah, it's been
amazing.
really exciting, and we're working on album number 2 already, and it's been just like a really good outlet for me for a lot of reasons. I grew up in a music store. My parents are both musicians, and we owned a music store until I was about 6 or 7. And so music has always been one of those things that has been really close to my heart my whole life, and kind of how I identify. And yet my parents were also like, oh, you can't pursue music as a full-time career because it won't make money and you won't be able to support yourself. And I mean, there's maybe some truth to that. I think very few people can succeed as full-time musicians. But I think it's been really nice now that I am stable in my career to be able to kind of dip back into that dream a little bit. So that's been consuming, I would say the majority of my time is daily practice and gigs. And this weekend, I'm going to cantor. So I'm singing at a Catholic church on Sunday. So
Oh,
that'll be fun. So yeah, I do
interesting.
voice lessons and practice piano and a lot of music. So that's been my main hobby. I also like really love to make stuff. So anytime an opportunity I get to like craft or do any kind of DIY things, I love that too. So
So music is the thing that I wanted to talk
okay.
about today. I really want to focus in on this because I think that you and I both are really interested in well-being in the veterinary profession. Both of us have been for a long time now. And there's so many talks on burnout and communications and quote unquote work-life balance and all these things. And yet I think that I don't know I've ever heard anybody within the profession talk about um,
Mm-hmm.
creativity and creative outlets. And I think about you in these last few years, and really when I met you, it was pre this real move into music, but even then, music was a huge part of your life and your fun groups. And I would watch how you lit up when you talked about writing music or just like playing with your friends. And I would feel like a jealousy. That's not
Yeah.
quite the right word, but like a
Hmm.
longing for that type of um, space to live in. So when you think about your brain in vet med or even in mentor vet, right? So our listeners probably know that you're the founder and CEO of mentor vet. That's a very left brain pursuit for the most part, I would assume. And then music, like talk me through how your brain shifts between the
Yeah.
two and what that does for you, like after the fact, how
Oh
you
my gosh,
feel.
this is a phenomenal question because I've been trying to find more integration between the two because they feel so separate sometimes. And I think it's been really hard for me because I think some just like my week right now, what my work week sometimes looks like is during the week I'm working at Mentor Vet during the day, but then switching to like practicing in my free time, like for an hour during my lunch break. And then I do a relief shift on like a random Thursday. And then on the
Yeah.
weekends, I'm, doing gigs and or speaking and then sometimes both. So we'll be in like, Chicago and I might be speaking that morning and then that night have a gig and have to kind of switch into these different roles and talk about identity dissonance sometimes. It's really hard to integrate the two parts of myself because they feel very different. And so I don't know, it's been like a work in progress to try to find the parallels and the commonalities and similarities. I think with the music it's a lot of kind of in the moment, especially performing. Practicing is probably more left brain than you would think because a lot of it's just kind of muscle
Mhm.
memory, doing the same exercises over and over again and just being hyper aware of it's almost like surgery, I would say.
Oh,
But because
interesting.
you're just, hyper focused on what your body is doing, like especially, with singing, what is my voice doing and how can I relax my tongue or lower my jaw? It's similar to like how I might hold my hands in surgery. So, there are parallels I think there, but like with performing music or writing music, it's like a very creative space and very much I don't know, like kind of embodying creativity. And I think the only times that I feel that are in mentor better are mostly like when I'm making new programs or like strategic planning or strategic thinking and trying to think big about what we're doing at MentorVet and how it relates to the industry as a whole. That gets into the kind of creative thinking realm. So I do see some similarities there, but I don't know if you have any tips. That would be nice because sometimes it's
Tips on
yeah.
integration?
I'm like,
No,
oh, identity
absolutely not.
integration,
No
no.
idea.
So yeah, it's
Oh, wait, we're supposed to like have a
oh
takeaway for our
yeah, no.
listeners, but I've got nothing.
It's
But
okay. I mean, I think that it is a work in
but let me ask
progress.
you
So
this. Let me ask you this because when you were saying you want to integrate more, why? What about integrating those two things would make it better?
yeah, I think for me, the hardest part is like the transitions. Like the
Okay.
shift between musician Addie and being, connecting with, my bandmate and connecting with the audience or connecting with myself through songwriting, like this really emotional state.
Our listeners are probably sitting here going like, well, what the hell does this have to do with me? Right. Like I'm a veterinarian. I'm working my ass off. Maybe I have kids. Maybe I'm, like, I don't know, working on some, like a practice owner who's super busy, that kind of thing. I don't play music, but I personally, very different from you. I did not have many hobbies in like the early middle of my career. I had my kids in vet school because I'm a crazy person, very focused on that. And yet, as a young person, I was very creative. I was involved in various artistic sides and then the nerdy intellectual sides, and they were always kind of separate, sort of like what I'm hearing you describe. And I thought a lot about how we all as parents want our kids, I shouldn't say we all, but many parents want their kids in some type of art program. And then we grow up and it's not part of our culture to be in music, to be in dance, to be in visual arts, unless you are like you said, that's your career, which you can't make a lot of money at unless you're really, really, really good. And I wonder why it's not okay to just be kind of mediocre, but continue to participate in the arts as an adult. I don't know, maybe the integration would be more natural with everything else that we do in our lives if it were more
Yeah,
common.
I have a lot of thoughts on this because I just read a great book. So it's called We Need Your Art. I was looking over the bookshelf because I just finished it. And
Can we just say, like, this was
no,
not
no,
planned?
not at all. No, no, no.
At all.
This was
You don't
not.
even know
This
what we were
was not
talking about
planned.
today.
But that book was really amazing because it talked a lot about the stigma around being an artist, and it is as an adult, like kind of, as a kid, you're like encouraged to do these things. And if you're not good, that's fine. But then suddenly as an adult, like and this book talks about this a lot, is like, if you're not like the greatest musician, if you're not, Taylor Swift, then what are you doing with your life? Like, why?
So yes, if you're not the best, it's almost like you're seen as
It's like childish.
wanting
Yeah.
attention,
Yeah.
childish, pitied, or yes, like it's embarrassed, like it should be embarrassed. And I don't want to say that and put that out into the world, but I do think a lot of people in our culture have that mindset around adults who are pursuing any kind of artistic expression. And so again, watching you over these years and seeing you just kind of like hold to the side of yourself, even that for me felt out of reach because you were a real musician. Do you know what I mean? Versus somebody else. So
Oh, can I just
anyway,
add, like, the
jump in.
the label as like I am a musician, like that just felt real in probably the last like 3 to 6 months, like it
Yeah.
is weird. And I think I would encourage any of the people listening today to like pick up that hobby and just like make crappy art. Like it doesn't have to be good. And the funny thing is, like, the more you do something, the better you get. So like you can't expect to start vet med and just like automatically be good at surgery and
Right.
doing the spay in like, 10 minutes. Like that takes a lot of practice. And similarly to a musical instrument or writing, or really, I mean, anything creative. If you've done any kind of knitting, you know that the first thing that you make is just not very good. And the key is like just you keep doing it because you like to do it. And who cares if your grandma is asking you, like, well, it's almost like, oh, you're doing music, like, when are you gonna leave vet med, or are you gonna, and
Right.
that's where I've
Right.
been getting into like feeling a little uncomfortable sometimes because I feel like I hide a lot of my music life because I'm worried about judgment, an external judgment of like, well, why are you spending much of this time doing this thing that's not at all related to vet med when you could be doing all these other
Yeah.
things? So that's where I've been like, I don't know, maybe a little bit more private about that aspect of my life.
I have two things in what you just said that I want to come back to. The first, I just have to reveal 3 months ago, I started taking piano
Woo, that's
lessons.
amazing. Aw.
And you know, our listeners may, like, if they've heard me speak, but I am really committed to anti-perfectionism. So in my role at Moves as CEO of our company, I try to lead by making as many mistakes as possible. And I'm not kidding, right? Like I want my team to see screwing up. Are we allowed to use bad language? I'll censor my sailor mouth. Um,
This is our podcast.
like
We
the
can do
goal.
whatever we want.
We can do whatever we want to do. But you know, screwing up is the goal, and you get better if you're willing to make mistakes and you have more innovation and all of that, like on the work side. And the same thing on the music side. I don't need to be, to what you just said, a professional musician or have some like long-term goal. I just want to sit at the piano and feel what it feels like for my hands to hit the keys and be completely focused on something that, you know, I'm not able to think about a million different things because I have to think so hard about what my fingers are doing and what that tempo should be or what have you. So there's that piece of it. And also, kind of related, what you said really triggered a memory for me about being kind of quiet about it out of fear of external judgment because it's not in vet med. I haven't felt this in a long time. I graduated 2007, University of Wisconsin. In the first probably 5 to 8 years, though, I really felt apprehensive about anybody thinking I wanted to do anything other than full-time practice. And I did receive judgment. I mean, I really saw the way people would look, how they would respond if you talked about anything, not just arts, anything that was not full-time veterinary profession. I think that the profession has shifted because we have so many part-time doctors, but maybe not. Maybe that stigma still exists.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel it. I don't know, when just talking to friends, family, other people in the profession, even like doing part-time relief, I think there's still sometimes this feeling of like, oh, like I should be in the clinic more. I'm, you know, right now I'm doing 1 day a week and that feels like a lot for my schedule. But I think sometimes, you know, even like people ask me like, oh, where else do you do relief or how often, or, you know, like,
Yeah.
oh, no, I'm just here 1 day a week, you know. And so I think I think there's less stigma now, but like especially when it comes to creative pursuits, I feel like it's like going back to school or doing something like masters in public health. Like I feel like that kind of stuff maybe feels a little bit more accepted. And maybe this is all in my head, I don't know, but I do see you know, sometimes people not placing the same value on like, oh, well, why would you be wanting to spend like 2 hours of your day practicing when you could be doing other things? I'm like, I don't know, I just like to do it. So it is interesting, and I don't know if it does still exist. I don't know whether it does still exist, but it is still very much existing in my head. So that must mean it's real, I guess.
Well, it's all in our head, right? Like I don't know if you've heard me say that, like as a coach, like that, I live by that, right? Like it doesn't really matter what other people think. If we believe it and we care about it, then it matters. And if we don't believe it and don't care about it, even if they do think it, it doesn't matter. And I'm at that stage of life, right? I'm just going to say it. I'm 49 and I'm kind of at the no F's to give stage of life. I've been there a little while, like you know me, but truly, you know, there are things that do bother me. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not perfect. I'm not bulletproof, but I'm telling everybody that I'm taking piano lessons. And listen, the person before me is like 4 years old.
I love
adorable. Like, but yeah, like I go in and I'm like the old lady and the 4-year-old kid is in front of me, and who cares? Because that's my time. And
I wonder
I
if
don't
it's
know,
more
like
for earlier career stage, that maybe we feel that pressure. Like
well, I think there are two things here. I think that there probably is more external judgment at early career because you're being scrutinized. Like we
haven't done our
subject to the scrutiny of others. Yeah. But I also think like my experience, and I talk to a lot of women who are in my phase of life, not career necessarily, who I'm just here to say, like, anybody who's feeling sad about getting older, no, it's fantastic.
I would recommend.
No F's to give. So like but not just about music, but I will say, I told a friend, not in vet med, but a professional, that I was taking piano lessons, and the look on their face, like, why? You know, and I thought about it a minute. I had no answer at the time. Like, this was pretty early on. And it again, it just doesn't matter. Like, I am doing it because I'm doing it. You could be sitting and watching Netflix for 30 minutes while I'm practicing piano. Like, that is my choice. Or anything else. So I'm rambling a little bit at this point, but I do think our confidence to have a life outside of vet med, and we need to come back to that, because that is the thing that really, it doesn't matter if it's music. It doesn't matter if it's a part-time job at a, flower shop. Like, having something that we care about that's not clinical, that's not veterinary for us, for you, that's not mentor vet for me, that's not, helping to run this company. Like, that is going to be a huge asset for our overall well-being. There's so many studies that show this, so many that I didn't even bother to like pull any to cite, because it's just like accepted, I think, that we have to be able to have a life outside of our career, especially the higher achieving we are. I think it becomes even more important. And so as we think about our listeners and what they can take away from this, one thing that really I wanted to not get off of this call without talking about was how hard this is to do early career and in school. You mentioned it at the beginning, but we didn't really talk about it. Like, I think that it's important to have it on the radar, but I would hate for somebody to be listening to this and feeling burnt out and then beat themselves up for not having a life outside of their profession.
Yeah. And I think it's all a process. And I think I remember when I was in kind of the worst stages of burnout in my early career and devoid of hobbies, or actually had some hobbies. But regardless, like maybe at a stage where I didn't really know who I was and didn't have, things that I was doing outside of vet med. Like the first step for me was like recognizing, oh, hey, I'm burnt out. And then the next step was, trying to dig my way out. And I think a couple of times this has happened. I mean, this happened to me once at Mentor Vet when I just realized like, oh crap, I said yes to too many things. I'm working 80 hours a week for the next 3 months. And what you do in those moments is you don't just run and start, learning the cello. You first figure out like, okay, crap, how am I going to get more free time back in my day? And those take those like micro decisions and boundaries and micro boundaries, even like, I don't even know if that's a term, but it is now.
We're gonna have a whole season on micro boundaries. I'm so
yes, micro boundaries. Because I think every time it's just these little decisions like, do I want to do that little thing at work, or am I saying yes to this thing outside of work that I've agreed to help somebody? And I think all these things kind of build up, and so sometimes it takes months to get to the point where you can start really digging into that hobby outside of what you're doing. So if you're feeling like how does this apply to me, just start small. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and we're talking about hobbies today. We're talking about art and music, but again, the point, and we'll come back to this in the next few episodes, I hope, is life outside of vet med. So that can be really tiny. That can be meeting a friend for brunch, right? Like, it doesn't have to be some big initiative or project.
Yeah.
But for those who are in a different place, I do think having something like this on their radar can be protective against
write the book. If you've been one to write the book, that are you thinking about?
Oh, I thought you were telling me to write the book.
Are you thinking about writing? Yes,
I'm always
write the
wanting
book,
to write a book.
Ginger. Have you been thinking about writing the book? So I don't know. If you anything that you've thought lately, I call people out all the time. They say, "Oh yeah, I used to play guitar, but it's been sitting in my closet for 5 years." I'm like, get that thing out and strum it. Just do it. Or like, I've always wanted. Somebody told me the other day that they had always wanted to be a DJ. And I'm like, okay, so do that thing. Like, so anything that you're thinking about right now, like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to do this thing, or it's always been a dream of mine to learn XYZ thing. Just like do it. Just take one step.
So that's the actual origin story of the piano lessons. I kept listening. So 2025 has been a little bit of a year of kind of returning to music for me in terms of artists that I really loved. 20, 30 years ago, like really pouring myself back into that side of life. And I was listening to, feel free to laugh at this,
Okay,
Tori
cool.
Amos.
Yeah.
Love her. And thinking, I wish I could play the piano. Like, I wish I could play. And this was for a few days, right? And then I was actually listening to like, I don't know, like Nine Inch
Oh,
Nails, like
yeah.
something else, like completely insane thing. And then I was like, well, yeah, you can, right? Like, you can't, like, you're not going to sound like that ever. And that's completely okay. So, yes, just get out the guitar, sign up for a lesson, whatever it is, just start.
Yeah.
And I really do have to reiterate anti-perfectionism. Like, try to be bad.
Yeah, it is hard to be bad at something, and especially if you're high achieving. And I don't know, I like spent my whole life thinking that I didn't have a good singing voice, and just have spent years and lessons, and like finally in this last year, I would say I finally am starting to enjoy listening to myself sing, which has taken a really long time. But again, if it's something, it's always been something that I wanted to do, is like have a beautiful singing voice. And it just is like nails on the chalkboard sometimes, but you just got to keep going. And I don't know, it just takes persistence, I think. And you will get better if you're, trying. Just keep trying.
And be willing to feel uncomfortable. When you say nails on the chalkboard, I'm sure it feels really uncomfortable to be practicing that. But like you said before, you're not going to get better until you go through that place of discomfort. So, well, hopefully our listeners will share some of their hobbies maybe, or what they want to try. And then in the next few weeks, we can talk about some other ways to really embrace the not vet med side of being a veterinarian, and how that I'm rambling at this point, so hopefully Jacob can just cut all of this, but I'm gonna
No, he's not even gonna cut all of it. It's gonna be real and authentic, and we don't have a way that we have no planned ending, so this is just us rambling at the end. Thanks for listening.
I regret saying anti-perfectionism, but hopefully our listeners will tell us what hobby they're going to try and how they're not going to try to be perfect at it.
All right. It was good chatting with you, Ginger. Let's do it again.